So this is, welcome to Hospital Planning and Infrastructure Summit. This is the third roadshow that we are doing in India. This will lead up to a 3-day exhibition come conference and a summit in Mumbai on 6th, 7th and 8th of October. We did the first, summit in Delhi, which was liked by, most of them came from around Delhi also, Chandigarh, Ludhiana, Punjab, Haryana, and that's what led us to believe that, we should do more of these in cities which are generally not, catered to by such conferences. So second one also we did in a city called Nagpur, which is Maharashtra, from where I come. My name is Dr. Vivek Desai. I am Managing Director of a company called Hosmac India Private Limited. We are in business of hospital planning and management consulting. We've been there for about 21 years. We are the knowledge partners, to the event organizers, which is a company called Ideas Exchange from United Kingdom, who do shows and events like these, in various faculties. My personal, exposure to Kerala also goes back almost 21 years when I began my consulting career. And I can see, Fakulty has come from Hyderabad. My senior in Tata Institute of Social Sciences, where I did my hospital management course and changed gears from doctors, to becoming a manager or a planner or a consultant, whatever we can call. In Kerala, we have done some, why Kerala? That was one of the, things when we debated. So Kerala has seen a fair amount of healthcare growth in the past 1 decade. I remember when we first did MIMS, which was way back in about 1998, 99, if I'm not mistaken. Kerala didn't have too much of private healthcare. And that was perhaps one of the first hospitals, on private sector, corporate basis. Most of the other healthcare was either government or cooperative movement. And later on, now you see the spate of, hospitals which have come up both in private sector as well as government, also trying to, and they are large-scale hospitals. So normally you don't see the scale of hospitals that come up in Kerala. You generally have 100, 200 beds in most of the other cities, but this state particularly has fair amount of large format hospitals. You look at Baby Memorial, you look at MIMS, you look at Aster Medcity, which has come up recently. We did Believers Church, hospital in Trivandrum, which just commissioned about 2 years ago, another 500, 800 beds. Whichever project comes is at least 500 beds, which is quite surprising for a small state, which is there. So we thought that, since so much of interest which is there, and one thing which is peculiar about Kerala, you will not see a GP-based practice or a nursing home-based practice. It's mostly institutional, which is very rare. In any other state that you go in India, you don't see that. You generally have more, general practitioners or nursing home based. I come from city of Mumbai. Mumbai has, say, about 50,000 odd beds now. 1/3 is nursing home, 1/3 is government, and only 1/3 is these large format hospitals that you see. So it's quite creditable to the state that, despite being one of the smallest, they have institutionalized their healthcare. That was one of the reasons, why we wanted to get into, Cochin, and thanks to Ideas Exchange, they agreed, and here we are all today, and I hope that this will be a very participative session. We are known to be more, seeking advices also from the audience, which is very august. I can see a lot of faces which are, big names in Indian healthcare. Having said that, let me begin with today's first session, which is a keynote speech by Dr. Harish Pillai on getting Kerala hospitals future ready. Dr. Harish Pillai, as most of you would know who are from Cochin, is the CEO of Aster Medcity in Kochi. At a very young age, he left the shores of India, went to Egypt, and was CEO of a very large private sector tertiary care hospital called Salam International Hospital in Cairo for over 7 years, before he chose to come back to India. He is also from Kochi. He's from Kerala, so he's the son of the soil. In 2015, Dr. Harish was promoted as the cluster head of Aster DM Healthcare in Kerala, which includes the Aster Medcity Aster MIMS in Calicut, Aster MIMS in Kottakkal, DM WIMS in Wayanad. His responsibilities also extend to Aster Prime Hospitals, which is in Hyderabad. As the cluster head, Dr. Pillai is also responsible for commissioning the upcoming greenfield projects of the group. As expert in hospital administration, quality and brand management, business strategy, product launches and joint ventures, Dr. Pillai has played a significant role in the development of healthcare industry in India and the Middle East and North Africa, which has been in Cairo for several years, by setting new benchmarks in quality and patient care. He's been featured in many industry-specific magazines and also won the Best CEO of the Year Award 2015 at the first CMO National Awards for Excellence. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Dr. Harish Pillai.
Kerala is very unique in many ways, not just for the descriptive aspects what Dr. Desai had just suggested. We are very unique in terms of our history and social milieu. I'll quickly go to my presentation, but if you get the time, this is a wonderful part of the year when you have to see at least the surroundings of Kochi if you can't travel far. A bit north to the city of Kochi, we have a small place called Kodungalur, which is part of world history. A few years back, archaeologists associated both with our state and national, they have done a lot of excavations and rediscovered the legendary port of the Mujaris, and it's a heritage site out here. The important aspect of this land to the world and history is that this is the land where, in the subcontinental history, where the first synagogue, when the temple of Solomon got destroyed by the Romans, the first wave of Jews which came to Asia settled down in this part of the world. Second to that, of course, extensive trade with the Romans, and like Dr. Desai said, I spent some time in Egypt. If you go to the great antiquities museum in Cairo, you will find the greatest Egyptian pharaoh, Ramses II. His mummy still is there. When they opened up the sarcophagus and discovered Ramses II, there was a peppercorn which was inserted in his nostril, and that peppercorn has come from the Malabar coast. So what I want to tell the audience here is that it is not Vasco da Gama who discovered the gateway to the east by coming to Kapad Beach in Calicut. The Romans had extensive trade relationships much before that. After the Jews came, St. Thomas the Apostle, who came here. The first church in the subcontinent was in this very land in Kerala. Immediately after, during the Prophet's time, the first mosque in the subcontinent or anywhere in the world after the Grand Masjid of Mecca was also here. You must find time to visit the Chairman Masjid. When Prime Minister Modi visited Saudi Arabia, a golden replica of the Chairman Masjid was presented to the King of Saudi Arabia. So this is the land not just of history but also dramatic social changes. We are the only state in India with a reverse sex ratio. We have more women than men in the state. And we like to call ourselves the land of Buddhijeevis, which I'm very fond of saying. Typical Malayali is a very cynical and a very skeptical person from an intellectual point of view, because we have the habit of questioning. We don't accept things easily. From a healthcare point of view, I like to say, with my limited experience in Kerala, if you run a hospital in Kerala, you're actually equipped to run hospitals anywhere in the world. The challenge in the state of Kerala is people management. If you can manage that essential resource, I think the rest is easy. So I'll give you a snapshot of my version of getting Kerala hospitals future ready. It's a combination of my understanding of history, sociology and demographic changes happening and what is really the needs of our community. The outline is talking about the new age consumer, which I'll touch upon, building hospitals of the future, where exactly to start, project management for the future, lessons to learn and mistakes to avoid, which I would like to be transparent from my own experience at Aster Medcity, I would like to share with the audience. Dissecting what impact technology will have on the healthcare delivery model. So coming to the first aspect, we are still in the eye of a storm in the state of Kerala. If some of you are not being switched on, we had a very successful nursing strike, I would say that. We have two strong nursing unions, the United Nursing Association and the Indian Nursing Association. I have great admiration for the unions as well as for the nurses of Kerala for many reasons. When we look at around 1910, I come from Travancore. My home is in Trivandrum. So there's a history of nursing in Kerala goes back to about 1906. I'm talking about modern nursing. When the king of Travancore decided to bring 6 nurses from Switzerland to impart modern nursing education to the community. And these were the pioneers of nursing curriculum or nursing education in the state. By the time of independence, we had about 300 qualified nurses, modern nurses in the state of Kerala. The very interesting aspect came because even in the first decade post-independence, the Malayali has always been a migrant. It's very interesting compared to rest of India. We love to travel and we love to settle down and form grassroots, and we absorb cultures wherever we go. The first wave of economic migrants in this state were actually nurses. Coming back a few decades much later, at when our former Union Defense Minister was the Chief Minister of the state, we had a opening up of education sector in the private sector, and large amount of nursing colleges were started in Kerala, primarily to cater to domestic expansion of healthcare industry and of course to cater to the West Asian markets thanks to the oil boom. It has had massive economic impact at grassroots level across districts in Kerala. So, from an economic point of view, I always talk about the Gini coefficient. Gini coefficient in economics talks about equity in healthcare. To give you an example, if I go to Karnataka, I have a large conglomerate of Bengaluru, and maybe I can talk a little bit of Mangaluru. If I go to Bengal, I have Kolkata and there is nothing else. If I go to Thailand, I have Bangkok and nothing else. But Kerala is unlike other demographic entities. So when I talk about Gini coefficient, I talk about equity in society. So you have Trivandrum, you have Kottayam, you have Kochi, you have Thrissur, you have Calicut, and now we are talking about Kannur. So the kind of grassroots level spread of healthcare and equity in society is dramatic for the state of Kerala. We don't have village in the traditional North Indian perspective of villages. If you drive across the length and breadth of state, we are probably the country's first urban state. So we adopt technologies in the first place. So when Dr. Desai was a young lad, I suppose, before going to TIS, and when he was a med school student, it was really talked in the retail sector. All the FMCGs in India used to use Kerala as the laboratory for figuring out. It's a pilot. All the pilots were done in the state to understand consumer trends. We are a consumer state. And that is why I told you that the Malayali is a Buddhijeevi who would like to, to adopt new technology and try out things. When it comes to communication, do you know that the state of Kerala has the highest penetration of smartphones in the country? That's why I talked about the success of the nursing strike. When I ran a hospital in the middle of a revolution in Cairo, I witnessed this very interesting experience because Tahrir Square was close to my hospital. I would say that was the first revolution in the modern world which was purely managed through Facebook. What I witnessed in Kerala just a few months back was equally interesting because the entire strike was the communication system where central command, that's the state union head, district headquarters, the hospital heads, were all communication through Facebook and WhatsApp messages. It's remarkable. It has an impact in which you run or plan a hospital. So from a Kerala point of view, you just cannot ignore your audience because of the Buddhijeevis. Thankfully, when I talk to my colleagues in the IMA, the percentage of litigations against doctors and hospitals in the state is actually coming down because of increased thrust towards accreditations. You have large amount of NABH accredited facilities in the state. Some of them have gone for international accreditations, whether it's Australian or Joint Commission accreditation. So that's a very good thing. And the doctors in the state are also going for documentation, especially going for electronic medical records. So there's a lot of emphasis on technology. The point which I wish to say is that a patient who comes to any hospital in Kerala first access Google Doctor. So they have complete awareness of their signs and symptoms, complete history. And typically a patient who comes to a Kerala hospital will tell the doctor that I suggest you should make this treatment plan and these are the drugs and perhaps these are the side effects. All you have to do is just give me a signature. That's a kind of a highly evolved person, and looks are deceptive in Kerala. The gentleman or the lady might come in a mundu. Mundu is a traditional vesti, a dhoti. But that guy is a global citizen, I tell you, because that guy is equally knowledgeable as somebody in Manhattan Square or somewhere else, because that is the kind of new age citizen what you're finding. So if you're not good in communication, or if your systems, your governance systems in your hospital are not geared to this type of a customer, you cannot sustain a hospital for the future. Digital communication. So in terms of sustainability and cost spent, other than going for print media or ATL, digital is something which is effective in a state like Kerala because of accessibility to smartphones, and that's what hospitals of the future need to focus on. The second aspect is that building hospitals of the future. So I'm very happy that Dr. Desai talked about the difference in models, where you talk about GPs in a state like Maharashtra, and in a state like Kerala, we have this mega projects. Now, why is that happening? The primary reason is demographic shift, and quote to quote, unquote, Dr. Desai, we are a very small state only in terms of geography, but in terms of impact, it's very unusual, because I cannot compare the state of Kerala with any other state in India. I have to look beyond our shores across Southeast Asia to look at Japan. I look at Japan for comparison, because a state with just 33 million people, you have a fertility rate of 1.75. To give you comparisons, UK, United States and Canada is just 2. You're better than the OECD countries. So the whole state is going through almost reaching the net replacement ratio. When I look at the 14 districts of Kerala, I find that in the public lower primary schools, we are not getting children to get admissions there. Not because private sector schools are any better. We are not producing enough babies in Kerala. And the funny thing is that many of us, all of us, like all the Malayalis, if you look at the DNA of a Malayali, there is P for politics as part of the chromosome. It is there. So it's just part of the, I don't know whether it's the coconut tree or what is that, it's all part of our DNA as a Malayali. But the point I'm trying to say is that going forward in 33 years' time, in 2050, this state will face massive challenges because of demographic changes. Again, when I talked about Japan, in 2010, 22% of the Japanese population will be geriatric. In the year 2100, 49.8% of the Japanese population is above 65. The only equivalent in India will be the state of Kerala. Today, in 2017, we have 4.5 million Malayalis above the age of 60. We are the #1 geriatric state. So for a planner, when you design a hospital, you have to look at the the target segment which you need to have is primarily the geriatric population. If we have, we also have, because we are extremely left of center, you have to look at cost sustainability. Like, to give you price points, if I go to a doctor in Gurgaon or to Dr. Desai's hometown, the OP consultation fee would be anywhere 1,000 plus, I suppose. But if you come to a city of Kochi, the OP consultation fee is between a band of 150 to 350 rupees. That's the cost band which we're talking about. Now, how does that work? The numbers don't match. That's a completely different challenge in terms of matching the maths and making this whole program sustainable. So if you design a hospital which is like a castle in the air, and unfortunately it happened in real estate sector that after the Gulf boom of 1970s, you will go to the interiors of Kerala and you'll be astonished by some of the constructions out there because of the Gulf money. Anyone who gets money for the first time wants to have a BMW, Mercedes, at least a car and a good, a Malayali loves his house, a palatial house. But if you have the same concept to a hospital without understanding the needs of the community, you're stuck with a white elephant. So planning and planning, that's what I would emphasize. If you have the will or the vision to build a hospital, first thing you have to understand what is the needs of a community. What's your target audience? Are you targeting your own district or your village or your panchayat? Are you looking at the 14 districts of the state? Are you looking beyond the state? Have you considered the accessibility to the state? To give you an idea, like Kochi, for example, I didn't ever think that in my hospital in Aster Medcity, I will ever get patients from across India. I never thought about that. Of course, I had a vision of being the Vellore of Kerala, to be a quaternary care center. I expected patients from other districts to come to, but surprise, surprise, I find I have patients from Hyderabad coming here. You know why? Because suddenly I found that connectivity from Kochi to Hyderabad is increased thanks to Indigo. So that point-to-point connectivity by air and cost of airfare is proportionally coming down. So when we talk about your target audience, it's not just international patients flocking over. You have a large volume of domestic patients who are also looking for value for money. So that is something as planners you need to look at. The second mistakes which planners do, and especially architects, you don't discuss with stakeholders. See, when you talk about a greenfield project, very rarely does a hospital promoter appoint a CEO or the man in charge who's supposed to drive the project. It's such a tragedy. If you don't have that execution team in place, most of your projects will suffer from either value engineering or optimization once the operations team come on board. At least you should have a fair idea if if for cash flow reasons you have not employed the team as part of your panel, you will have an idea of what your specialities are based on your epidemiological and market survey. Start talking to doctors. What kind of a theater do you want? Do you really want to have a modular OT or a traditional OT? People talk about cost factor of those kind of things. It's so simple. Like when you talk about the economics of the foundation of a hospital, if you don't spend much money on your piling structure, I suppose then you will have some kind of a light structure, then you will have to go for a modular OT. So you will have to look at all those economic aspects before you take any kind of decisions. As a thumb rule, for those of you who are not aware of, the average cost per bed construction of hospitals in Kerala is between 45 to 65 lakh rupees. There have been exceptions who have crossed the 80 lakhs plus model, but now we have a good example in the city of Calicut, the Maitra Hospital, which is opening up on 17th of September, which has got for a completely revolutionary aspect of prefab structures. It's the first hospital in the Kerala which has completely gone for a prefab module, because when you go for prefab, the cost is definitely more than your traditional structure, but you save on your time of commissioning is quite rapid. So these are some interesting changes which is already happening, but I would like to emphasize that spend more in terms of your project planning from idea to execution. Your first patient, spend maximum on your planning. And that's why Dr. Desai, I've known him for over 20 years now. The fact that HOSMAC is successful because they have learned the art of planning, investing much more in planning, because that really saves all of you huge amount of headaches in the later part. We touched a bit about the impact of demographics. You can already look at the data in this is an old data. In 2010 itself, we have 11.880. Now, if you look at the median age of the state, it's 33 years. And the South India overall is aging. So just to go back in time, past from the millennium bug, when we talked about Y2K problem, when 99 became 2000, that's actually the origin of the Indian IT boom. The Indian IT boom has taken off thanks to South India. Young, educated working population. Therefore, you have all the IT clusters located in Bengaluru, Chennai, Hyderabad. All of them were because South Indian, educated, young working population. That band, like I'm very fond of saying that I belong to the sandwich generation of Indians. What is the sandwich generation? 1965 to 1975. I belong to that rare generation in India's history. We were around before the mobile phones. We were there before emails. We were also there when the Doordarshan logo was quite visible. We were also there. We witnessed live the first Asian Games in Delhi. This is the sandwich generation. This is the generation today which is running our country. The next generation which is coming is a completely different generation whose value systems, their consumption patterns also in healthcare is so different from us. So we have some connection with our fathers who happened to witness independent India, at the time of independence. The next generation is completely different. That's a gung-ho generation which is going to conquer the world. So you have to be in touch with demographics, especially in a state like Kerala when you plan your projects. Chronic disease management, that's a big issue. People don't realize that when I talked about the demographic changes, I told you about the reverse sex ratio in Kerala. We are also highly literate and very evolved. We also created world history in 1957 by electing the first communist government of EMS Namboodiripad through democracy when Nehru was the Prime Minister of India. That's part of world history today. But what did the leftists do in 1957? Increase budgetary allocation towards social sectors, education and healthcare. So succeeding governments, we always have this bipolar system of left after 5 years, we go to the right. Here in Kerala's presence, I would say the Congress and the UDF is more left than the communists. It's part of ideology. We are totally left of center as a state. But over decades, it's fantastic. Social sector investments you can see the fruits of that. Massive investments to education and healthcare compared to any other state in India. Therefore, to give you an economic parallel, in 1960, the number one per capita income state in India was the state of Maharashtra, followed by the state of Punjab. In last year, in 2016, per capita income level in major states in India, number one state was the state of Haryana, and number two state, surprise, surprise, the state of Kerala. You will be wondering that why, how can that ever be? Because we were terrible in manufacturing. In 1950s and early 1960s, industrialization, especially in public sector in Kerala, was significant. But in 70s, because of trade union movement, manufacturing just went away. So we are very fond in Kerala to say that red is green. Now, that's an oxymoron. Why is red green? Red is green, my friends, because of our specific economic and social milieu. We have focused more on green technologies or green industries. So you have space research in Trivandrum, we have education, we have healthcare, we have Ayurveda from a traditional, we have biotechnology. So we have leveraged the Buddhijeevis of the state, the knowledge sectors, and using brain power to promote industries and employment generation. The second aspect, the Kerala economy today is primarily dependent on economic migrants, Keralites who have gone to other states and outside India, who have sent the money orders or net transfers back to India. That is the whole economic picture of it. So from a disease point of view today, we have a big burden. We are the number one diabetic state of India. For a state of 33 million people, we have 7.2 million diabetics currently in the state of Kerala. So if you have the sugar molecule, if you're unfortunate enough to have the sugar molecule, head to toe, all your systems are impacted. Whether it's ophthalmology, your ENT, neurology, cardiovascular system, renal functions, everything is impacted. Your planning of your departments of hospitals, your equipment planning, space planning, functional planning need to cater to not just today's picture, but how does disease management look like in the future? When you step back and look at macroeconomics, the state of Kerala, because of fiscal reasons, we never had the fiscal capacity, because already we have allocated quite a bit in social sectors in terms of spend, in terms of subsidies and other things. But unfortunately, we could not allocate capital to creating capital infrastructure in the public sector. Dr. Desai did allude to the fact that there are some projects in the pipeline, but many of us question that in terms of oncology. We have the third highest incidence per capita of new cancers compared to northeastern states. But then when we look at public sector investments, we have one RCC, Regional Cancer Center in Trivandrum, and we had one MCC, Malabar Cancer Center in the north. But in a place like Kochi, we are still struggling, and there is efforts by the public sector and by the government to create a new cancer center. But why did we take so many decades to do that? It's just fiscal issues. How do you balance the budgets? So that you in the private sector, those of you in the private sector, you will have to keep these elements when you plan hospitals for the future. Home healthcare, it's something interesting. It's a bit of tragicomic kind of a situation. I told you I come from Trivandrum. So my house in Trivandrum is very close to the medical college. My father is 85 years of age. My amma is about 78 years of age. They are seniors. They live alone. It's typical of many of people of our generation where their parents, there is no joint family system anymore in Kerala. We don't even have nuclear families. We are talking about the sub-nuclear families today. So if my amma and achan have a health issue, I panic. You know who I depend on? My tenant. Thankfully I have a young couple who are techies who are staying upstairs, and I don't even care for what rent he gives me, because for the security of my father and mother, my tenant's presence there is so important, or my neighbor. This is across Kerala. So what is going to happen? One of the reasons when Dr. Desai said that I decided to come back from abroad, I decided to come back home for Sen. I'm a typical middle-class Malayali boy. I love my amma and achan. I have come back home primarily because amma and achan. I cannot imagine staying outside India, because how long will I have tensions about what is the health of my amma and achan? I have to call up Dr. Sahadullah and KIMS, or somebody, if achan has got a health issue, has to go to, I can't sustain this thing anymore. So home healthcare, my friends, is definitely the future. And the way you plan home healthcare is to do with my previous slide, that those of you who have cracked the aspect of continuous disease management, if you have a diabetes patient, your diabetes patient is never a singular episode. You're going to have a patient for the rest of your life. Does he have to come back every time to you to look at a periodic survey? I say not. You marry technology with home healthcare in terms of your sugar controls, your glycemic protocols. You look at disease patterns. You look at laboratory tests. You look at drug delivery aspects. So home healthcare, if leveraged well, is definitely a future aspect from a business point of view for those of you planning hospitals in Kerala. You cannot sustain a hospital you build a 500, 600 bed hospital and thinking that its patients are just going to come to you. That's not going to happen. because the power equations have completely changed in the state of Kerala, where the consumer or the patient is all powerful. So you need to keep this aspect in mind. Cost-effective care. So there has been large amount of debates in the public space. To give you a bit of history, in the year 2010, nurses in Delhi went on strike for improvement of wages. In 2011 October, one Malayali nurse in a hospital in Mumbai committed suicide, and that triggered off a series of strikes in Kerala in 2011. The state of Kerala at that time had a UDF government which set up a committee called the Balaraman Committee, which was designated to study the wage issues in the state. Do you know that in health sector we have 178 categories of jobs in a hospital? 178 categories are there. So the state of Kerala in January 2013 became the first state in India to declare minimum wages for health sector. It was already done. What happened was the Trained Nursing Association of India in 2011 went to the Supreme Court to say that the status of nurses' wages in the private sector across India is abysmal. So the Supreme Court appointed the Professor Jagdish Prasad Committee, who's the Director General of Health Services, to come up with recommendations. What are his recommendations? Now this is a bit of a challenge because it's also a black box. The recommendations are that for hospitals less than 50 beds, you have to pay a minimum salary of 20,000 rupees. For hospitals between 50 to 100 beds, your salary scale cannot be less than 25% of equivalent wages in your state public system. If you have a hospital above 100 beds, it cannot be less than 10% of similar capacity in the public sector. Now, I'm a rational person, and I really believe in equity of people. But the challenge for me is that how did the esteemed Professor Prasad arrive at this 20,000 rupees minimum wages across India for one specific trade? I don't know that. Because I told you, India is not India. India is the United States of India, where the GDP of every state, the microeconomics are so vastly different. Kerala is definitely not the NCR region. It's definitely not like Maharashtra. So nobody has really looked at the economics of this debate. The nurses strike, because when you looked at it, the hospitals in Kerala are even still perceived. I must openly confess that hospitals are still perceived to be bourgeois. I mean, it's a Marxism word. Bourgeois are considered to be capitalist, exploitative, always looking at an extra buck. That's what bourgeois is all about. All private hospitals, unfortunately, have a perception, thanks to the empathy which the nurses have generated, that we are the exploitive bunch of people. That when you remove emotions and look at this cost-effective care, I have no idea how maths is going to base. We have approximately 2,400 private hospitals in Kerala, of which more than 90% of these hospitals are less than 100 beds. There are only 33 hospitals in Kerala which is more than 250 beds. So when we look at the economics of it, the largest amount of hospitals in Kerala cater to the semi-urban areas. They have Karunya, that's the state government funded schemes. You have ESI patients. Some of them might have ECHS patients. I do not know how the maths is going to add up, the cost burden. Some of us have done our calculations, so we feel that the wage impact, which is going to be announced on 20th of this month, easily all of you will have to revise your prices minimum by 20% to maintain status quo of your P&L statement. So this is something which you really need to look at in terms of cost effectiveness. So when we talk about planning of hospitals, have you really looked at the future sustainability of your model is something you need to really look at. Private-public healthcare collaborations, you have to really look at it whether, for example, in the model which I explained, the payer is the state government or the central government. They give you the bunch of patients and the payer mechanism is there. You as a provider just provide that. But there are pioneering states in India. If you look at hospitals in Jaipur, you have wonderful examples where public hospitals have outsourced the entire diagnostic space to equipment vendors as well as private parties. So suddenly in a large public hospital in Rajasthan, when you go inside, suddenly you go to the diagnostic space and it's as good as the best corporate hospital in India. So there are possibilities, and thankfully the Niti Aayog has put up a concept paper to drive through PPP models across India for fiscal reasons. As long as the interests of the patients in terms of affordability, accessibility and assurance, the AAAs are taken care of, this is a way to expand the healthcare enterprise, not only for the rest of India, but definitely for Kerala. Collaborative medicines between private players. Gone are the days when you have to work in isolation in terms of strategies. The effect of the recent nursing strike was, for the first time, hospitals, even competitors, they came on board and started talking to each other. Many of us who have responsibilities for a larger space, like for me, I don't look at Aster or Aster group of institutions. I feel that India is in a cusp of inflection point as an industry. We can show we are the laboratory for change for the rest of the world. What we do today is sustainable not only for Asian countries or Africa, but even for the developed West. So we need to look beyond our single institution and look at what are the few common goals, a common minimum program by all the providers and stakeholders to take this thing forward. So you need to look at it. I have examples like, for example, in Kochi now we have 2 Joint Commission accredited hospitals. So I'm one of those people. I'm also in the International Advisory Board for the Joint Commission. So we go out and share our ideas and concepts to competitor hospitals. You know why? Because today in the age we have the first time in our history we have a Prime Minister who was a Chief Minister of a state, and he believes in terms of competitive federalism. So if I don't do things for my state, the state of Kerala, I'm sure that some other state will have pole position in terms of dramatic reformations in the health sector. So I have to think outside for the state of Kerala, only then it's going to be sustainable. Building in terms of globalized societies, I explained the concept of immigration. And see, when we talked about the nursing strike in Kerala, the fundamental geopolitical issue, why the nurses went on strike in Kerala, because oil price has touched to $45. It's crashed from the early 90s, $100. It's never going to be more than $45. Why is that? Because, as you know, the Volvo CEO has already announced in 2019, Volvo as an automobile manufacturer will never make a combustion engine ever. They are going fully electric. The government of India has declared that in 2030, we are going to have only electric automobiles. So the fossil fuel-based economies of West Asia has crashed. No more oil boom. So the nurses of Kerala who used to go to West Asian countries for jobs, they're finding that the employment opportunities are decreasing year on year. So what else can you do? Like if you get a better salary in your state, you better stay in your own state. So you need to understand the geopolitical and economic factors when you plan your facilities. Leveraging technologies for aspects. For example, I have the Da Vinci surgical robot in my hospital. I'm also a bit of a futurologist. I always think that what happens if Da Vinci gets married to Dr. Watson? Manipal Hospital in Bangalore has already introduced IBM Watson, Dr. Watson, for oncology aspects. If you look at Da Vinci, the surgical robot, which is currently a slave robot, and you link up artificial intelligence with that, you have an autonomous surgeon happening out there. Is your hospital, your theater aspects, for example, the design of your theater, your manpower planning, is it catered for that? One of the challenges in terms of wage revision is that your allied workers, transport, how do you transport a trolley through your hospital? So we were looking at innovative tools like Uberizing, I'm using the word deliberately, Uberization of your wheelchairs and your trolleys through the hospital. If your nurse who triggers of the call can actually map physically, exactly like a Uber, where exactly is the wheelchair or the trolley within the hospital, it saves so much of time, efficiency improves, obviously manpower planning can be much better. So technology, if used wisely, will make you much more cost effective. Telemedicine, I mentioned before about the impact of home care. Your entire body, the clothes what you wear, will be biosensors. The glasses which you wear will transmit information. We are living at historic times. For the first time in our history, our satellites, launched by ISRO, is linked up with the National Physical Laboratory in Delhi, where the atomic clocks are set. So I can say proudly as an Indian that IST, when we talk about IST today, is actually linked to an Indian atomic clock in Delhi. And we don't have to. Those of us who use Google Maps, in few months' time, we are now no longer reliant on the GPS anymore, the global positioning system. We have our own satellite constellation, which will show us the way forward. So my dream for my country is that because of the specific challenges which we face in Indian healthcare, there will be a lot of jugaads happening. We have incubator spaces in Smart City and InfoPark in Kochi. We have wonderful activities, R&D happening in Bengaluru. These kind of innovation clusters is going to make healthcare in India much more smarter, much more affordable, and definitely going to be effective. So you as a hospital planner need to incorporate and understand what is happening in our ecosystem. So all these things you're aware about in terms of technology of the future. When I came back from Cairo in 2013, the highway in which my hospital is being, it's called the Container Terminal Road. It's built, custom built for the port of Cochin. So I have the habit of when I go to a new city, I normally go and befriend the auto rickshaw driver, and it's my habit. If I go to Chennai, I can't speak Tamil very well, but if you don't know Tamil in Chennai, you will be in trouble with the auto rickshaw driver. I mean, I love Hyderabad. One of the reasons I love Hyderabad is if you have a reasonable command over Hindi in a place like Secunderabad, you come out. The auto rickshaw drivers are so wonderful. They accept you as your own. It's a kind of a Hyderabadi culture. Same thing I did in Kochi. When I came, I took an auto rickshaw to go to my hospital, which is under construction. So I asked the auto rickshaw driver in Malayalam that what is this thing? What is this building coming up? So he told me in Malayalam that I think it's a kind of a 5-star hotel, or I also heard that it's a hospital, but it's only meant for foreigners. It gave me strategic insights that, my God, that's a common perception of my hospital. My hospital will have to be shut down. I will never succeed. So for confidence, what did I do? I went to Lulu Mall. Lulu Mall at that time, 3 years back, was a brand new mall, definitely the largest mall in India. So I used to go to Lulu Mall as a curious social observer and stand in the hypermarket and watch at the green channel. They have a green channel where if you don't have don't have large amount of groceries and you just stay. And I was just watching how much is the cash spent per by consumer. It was at those days, 3 years back, it was around 1,500 rupees. It gave me a sense of confidence, and I also observed, because I used to go and talk to the retailers within Lulu Mall, at how's business today, how are things. So we found that large amount of consumers are coming from Malappuram, from Thrissur, they were all tourists. They were all coming to enjoy the experience and maybe little bit of spend, maybe see a cinema and go back. But today when I go to Lulu Mall, it's, my God, it's difficult, extremely difficult to go and enter Lulu Mall because they got the formula correct. My suggestion, my friends, is when you plan your project, strategic planning, would you like to be a game changer and a disruptive innovator? Would you like to be the Lulu Mall of healthcare for the state of Kerala? Thank you very much for your time.
Another who's from the event organizing company, Ideas Exchange, to felicitate Dr. Harish Pillai. I think I always love hearing to you, Dr. Harish. You bring a very different perspective. Would you agree? Then a better round of applause, please.